Welcome, Usha, to Struggle to Strength.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to participating.
So excited about having this conversation. And before we get started, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Mary Beth Simone, and I am the founder of Niche Partnership Consulting. I help entrepreneurs and professionals create their contingency plans so that they are prepared for an extended vacation or for an emergency. And my business was born out of a personal struggle. And through this platform, my goal is to highlight the struggles that have led to strengths that my guests are willing to discuss, in hopes that it will help the audience also identify the strengths that they have developed as a result of their own struggles. And if you are with us live, we invite you to put a comment in so that we know that you're here. And if you have any questions for Usha or me throughout the conversation, feel free to put them in and we will do our best to answer your questions. So Usha, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you, Mary Beth. It's a pleasure. Thank you for thinking about me.
So I'm so excited to talk to you. Our conversation, we're going to try and focus it on how you found the strength to advocate for loved ones and your community. But before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your work?
Yes, so my name is Usha. I was born and raised in Orlando, Florida, and I'm a first-generation Indian American. Politics is in my blood. My grandfather was a freedom fighter and a member of parliament in India and fought for India's independence. So all my life, I grew up with stories about my grandfather and the struggles that he endured against the British rule and how he fought for what he believed in. And I feel like it's those principles that were instilled in me at a young age that it's in my DNA to fight for what you believe in. I've been working in politics at the local and federal government for the past 15 years. Prior to that, I worked on political campaigns, and I just like to advocate for others and create an awareness in the community where I live.
Oh my gosh, Usha, I never knew the family history of political advocacy, and it does completely seem like it is in your blood.
Yes, it is.
For sure.
It is. I never had the, pleasure of meeting my grandfather. So, hopefully he's looking down and proud of the, work that I'm doing, because it's what he did that also keeps me going.
I bet it does. And I'm sure that he is very, very proud of all of the work that you do. You're one of the busiest women I know. And so we'll get into more of that. So just as a little bit of context and background, we met through Speaking Your Brand. And I think the first time that I ever saw you in action, Usha, was in the Brave Bold Beyond Summit. You were one of the initial speakers, and then we were in the Thought Leader Academy together.
Yes, that's correct. That was something, as a caregiver, I'm always, doing things for others. And that was something that I wanted to do for myself. And it was the best personal investment. And I met great individuals like you. And a year and a half, 2 years later, we're still in touch. So
that's right.
It was definitely worth it.
Yeah, for sure. So can you take us back to the time when you realized that your mother had Alzheimer's?
It was a very difficult path. There wasn't one moment when I realized it because, to be honest with you, despite my father being a physician, he was a gastroenterologist, I was not that savvy with neurological disorders. I just, thought everything was mental health related. And, my father passed away about 23 years ago, and it was a bit suddenly, heart attack. And I immediately, it feels like at that time, became my mom's caregiver. And I had just graduated from college, and my dreams were to be a diplomat in the United Nations or State Department. And, I kept telling my mom that, okay, I'll be in Orlando a little longer. And then I want to go pursue my dreams, get a master's at Tufts or Columbia University. And along the way, there would just be situations. She would either be hallucinating that, things were burning, or she would throw my clothes. I would go to work and come home. My clothes would be all gone in the trash. She would give our TV away, or even the cushions to our sofa, and we would just have, the shell remaining. So at that time, I thought it was just her way of getting attention for me to stay at home. And, naturally, my everything centered around my dad, that, it was her way of, I don't know if it's schizophrenia, or displaying mental health issues. So, we encouraged her to go to a psychiatrist, which was another ordeal. She would jump out of the car in moving traffic, try to. And, fast forward several years later, and I dealt with it on my own, because that's what everyone kept, guiding me. It's mental health issues. There were times when she would get so frustrated with me, she would hit me on my arms and I would get bruises. And I knew it was out of frustration. And then she wouldn't realize what happened. She'll be like, "Who did that to you?" And then I would tell her, walk her through. She goes, "No, I didn't do it." It's like she would have memory issues. So fast forward a few years, I went to her place and I found her on the ground. She was unconscious, and, she was rushed to the emergency room, and that's where they did a workup, especially neurologically, because couldn't understand if she had a stroke or what. And the MRI revealed that she has dementia and hydrocephalus, which is fluid in the brain. And that kind of started to explain her behavior the last several years, and put things into perspective, what was going on with her, that it wasn't more so mental health. A lot of it was mirroring. There was actually something going on in her body that she was unable to explain, and I did not understand.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so confusing.
It was, and it was a very difficult time, because, I had come back from college. I didn't have a lot of friends back in Orlando. I was, with my mom, and, we had family friends, and, my father passed away. He was the physician, the resource. So it was a very challenging time of my life, that, looking back, I think it's those types of situations that gave me the strength to continue and made me a stronger person.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. And Usha, was she living on her own at that time?
I was living with her, and then I left her. And then when I left her, that's when she started to deteriorate quite a bit. She couldn't take care of herself. She had like knots in her hair, hygiene. She would not understand, to do the dishwasher. She was putting regular soap in there and everything would flood. So it was a challenge, and I thought that I could, juggle my work and keep her separate, go visit her. But it was one of those situations, especially when she became unconscious, when I found her, that I said, I'm putting myself under too much stress. I need to understand what is going on, and, start documenting these symptoms and these episodes, because that's what catches the doctor's attention, what is going on, because then they see that you're involved with the care, once they see you've got your copious amount of notes with specific dates and times.
Yes, yes, they do love a chronology of events, like data. They like data.
Exactly.
Um, and so, uh, so can you describe what the evolution was when you realized that you needed to become her caretaker, and how you managed that with everything else you have going on?
I realized I needed to become her caregiver about 3 months after my dad passed away, after family left. So that was about 23 years ago. Because, with her mental health, and we were a very close knit family, very close to my parents. And, my parents would push me to go beyond my comfort zone. And, gradually, with time, fast forward, once she got the diagnosis, I realized that my presence, that my dreams of becoming a diplomat or working at the State Department, that's not a priority right now. My mom is my priority, because if I'm constantly stressed about her, it's not going to help me. Um, So that's when I became her caregiver. And dementia was a new concept for me. I didn't understand what it was, and I was scared to Google it, because once you start Googling, especially medical symptoms, it becomes very overwhelming and more depressing. So that's the reason why I kind of took the unconventional route and went to the Alzheimer's walk on my own to see what that was like, to hear stories. And that was my way of being a better caregiver to her, being surrounded in that environment and understand what she's going through, as well as providing some mental stability for me.
So is there a big difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
I think dementia is like the an umbrella, and Alzheimer's falls under that. More specifically, my mom had vascular dementia, and it seems like she was prone to more mini stroke episodes, especially the final 6 weeks of her life. It seemed like it was happening quite a bit. So that's what at that time her specific diagnosis was. But again, it's difficult even for physicians, to pinpoint. I wish, looking back, I wasn't thinking at that time. I wish I would have donated her brain, so that we can have a better understanding of, what she had, and in hopes of helping others.
Wow, yeah, that's great context for us.
Mhm.
And then from the advocacy perspective, then you eventually stepped into being an Alzheimer's advocate. Can you tell us about that work?
Yes. So in my day job, I advocate for constituents in Florida and in my community in the Orlando area. And I figured that, if someone who's pretty savvy in providing resources to others and knowing where to go, I can just imagine how the average person would not know where to go. It is very overwhelming. There's a financial, there's a mental, aspect to it. So I decided whatever free time I have, to devote my time in advocacy to help others, to make them aware that, how these symptoms mirror mental health issues. These are the resources to go to. I turned to the Alzheimer's Association 800 number when my mom was hallucinating on a weekend, 2 o'clock in the morning. How do I deal with that? And I wanted to use that savviness in using my voice, and also becoming the voice for my mom to advocate and to make a difference, because it is a very dark world, scary world that you live in. Although there is support out there, at the end of the day, it's not there 24/7 or when you need it the most.
Right. That's exactly right. And I've learned so much about resources that are available through you. And I think that most of us have no idea how to leverage those resources that are at our disposal.
And it's also scary, because a lot of it is the what if, the unknown. So this process kind of taught me to go outside my comfort zone, and to be daring, and to not be afraid. One thing is, another way that I advocate is on social media. I'm a very private person, but then I started to take videos of my mom showing her mobility challenges, and I created an Instagram account. And I did not realize that by doing that, at first I was scared and I was embarrassed to show what was going on. But at the same time, I did not realize it would give me so much comfort that there's another community out there, because your family and friends only know so much. But in the social media world, believe it or not, this turned out a positive thing. I met so many people across the world who are going through what I'm going through, and we have the courage to share our stories, and would message each other or make comments like, "Oh, that's a good tip. I didn't think about it." And then, that just, grows, and, the roots gradually spread. So that was another form of advocacy that has helped me tremendously.
Yeah, and that's where you can really see social media as a blessing, like where it makes you feel more connected in a situation where we can tend to feel very alone.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I am so sorry for the loss of your mom at the end of last year. Um, Can you share with us how things are going for you now? What is life like?
It's really, I think it's frustrating for me because when I was a caregiver, I was doing so many things. I was caring for my mom. I was working full time. I would try to get a workout in. I was very much on a schedule. I had a very, still maintained an active social life. Looking back, I don't know how I did it. And now I'm just, I feel like in a dark hole, but in a positive way because I'm trying to rediscover myself. I'm trying to get on a schedule. The last, 6 months of 2021 were very difficult. It was very scary for me, not knowing if I go to sleep, if I wake up, my mom's going to, still be awake. She was experiencing mini strokes. She was not able to move, and a lot of that would fall on me. I would have to call the fire department if she fell because I wasn't able to lift her up on my own. She would not understand commands, and I think especially the last few weeks of her life, I decided to put her in hospice, home hospice. So that was a very difficult decision that I'm still, replaying in my life because I didn't get a chance to think through things. At that moment, it's like, this is what I need to do, sign the DNR papers. That was a difficult thing for me to do. And then I hit the paper, they're like, no, you need to put it on your fridge. So, those types of things that were starting to get very overwhelming. My mom was having trouble eating. She was aspirating, and doctors kind of gave me the hope that she was going to be alive for another year and a half. Even hospice indicated to me, they said that, you're taking such good care of her that we may have to discharge you because you're taking such good care of her. I think, she's going to be fine. And then just, the final week, Thanksgiving, the trauma that living by myself with her to hear, help me, I'm dying, it just breaks my heart and it just traumatizes me. So I think right now I'm going through that, reliving what happened, flashbacks. I have been going for counseling through hospice and through my work, which I highly recommend to individuals. I didn't do one, but I did two, just, to get a different perspective and to keep me on track. And, I'm focusing on myself. It is something I've neglected my health, especially the last 6 months. I'm on an extra blood pressure medicine. I've put on weight, and I know in my mind that this is what I need to do. I've got a bit more time on my hands, but once my work is finished, once I log off, I just, start wandering off and thinking about my mom and thinking how I used to stay busy. And before I know it, it's time for bed. And it's like, I should have done this, I should have done that. So I'm learning to take baby steps again and not to be harsh on myself and just to take it easy. And that, with time, I'm going to come out of this just as strong as I have the last several years being my mom's caregiver.
Yeah. And I mean, 23 years is a long time, Usha.
Yeah.
That's a
It's like
long time.
reinventing myself.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's, a whole quarter of your life,
Mhm.
So it definitely will take time. And we've just gone through something, with a loved one that was only 2 years. And so very small fraction of time compared to everything that you've gone through. And I can relate to all of the disruption and the challenges and how weird it feels after it's over to not have all of those concerns and all of those requirements going on in your life. Finding that new time.
It's difficult because you know what, even little things when I go out to dinner or I'm looking at my watch, like, okay, like subconsciously I start thinking I need to get home to take care of her. And then I'll realize through the evening, like, no, I don't need to. I need to learn to relax. So it's, that kind of anxiety that, develops that I'm still 6 months later, it's difficult to shake off.
Yeah. And I think, like, from the experience that we went through, there was maybe a certain amount of PTSD that happens because you're just observing what happens to the human body and, the deterioration process. And so it's a lot to take in.
It is, it is definitely PTSD because I was able to multitask, do a lot, several things at once. And now I have to focus on one thing because if not, I start getting anxious, like, oh, I can't handle it. It's a different type of feeling, in the post caregiving journey.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
We have Masood Ahmed is with us. Yeah, I'm glad that you're enjoying this conversation, Masood. Please let us know if you have any questions for Usha. So, what is it about Alzheimer's that you wish more people understood?
I think for me, there are three key things. The first thing is that it's not a memory issue. A lot of people were scared to interact with my mom. They would be like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how she's going to react. Till the end, my mom recognized my brother and I, and it became a lot of cognitive challenges. Your brain controls your body. She was not able to walk, her kidneys were not functioning, she was not able to eat. So that's one thing, with Alzheimer's, it's not just a memory issue. It's some people, it does affect memory. My mom's long-term memory was a bit better than the short term. There are times when she's able to remember, there are times when she's not. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Alzheimer's it's not an elderly disease. It's hitting a lot of young people nowadays. I have been going to Washington, D.C. for the past, I believe, 4 years. And the first year I went, and I did not really meet anyone who had early onset. Early onset means 30 to like 60, 65 years old. And I just went last month, and there were 4 Floridians who have early onset. So, this disease is not an elderly disease. It is affecting young people. And it's important to know what the signs are. That's why this awareness and advocacy is important to me, is that, that way it encourages people to go online to see what the symptoms are and to have open discussions with their physicians and their healthcare providers. The last thing is that the reason I advocate also is because this is truly a healthcare tsunami that is straining our healthcare system. You've got the patient who is, who has a primary care physician, who has to go to a neurologist. And as I mentioned, is that, it's the brain that's shutting down. So you have to go to different specialists. All this costs money. Then you've got the caregiver portion of it as well. Caregiving is expensive. I was my mom's primary caregiver and worked full time. I would get someone, maybe I started off with a few hours a week, to eventually I stretched it to 20 hours just so I could get respite care because I didn't get that. But also, it is a healthcare tsunami because it takes a care on the caregiver's health. I know for me, I was healthy, when I first started this journey, working out a lot, and I have really healthy eating habits. Don't keep junk food at home, and it got to the point the last few months it was survival. Like, okay, I'm going to order Uber Eats, eating out all the time, ordering food. That's how you put on weight, and then it starts affecting my blood pressure. So as I mentioned earlier, that I need to refocus and, reset button for myself, for my health, so I don't become a burden on the healthcare system. I realize that I do have a situation that is challenging, and I just need to take baby steps. My goal is by the end of the year to, get off that extra medicine for my heart rate, that and just gradually eliminate medication that I needed to be on.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you will make a ton of progress in that direction. And I can relate to your experience, like with us in such a short amount of time that we experienced something similar. It was just I wanted comfort food. I wanted it to be easy. I was cooking all of these different meals all the time, and I just wanted things to be easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's true. And then, my mom was such a foodie. She used to have a lot of, entertainments. We would have people over. And, after she passed away, I forgot. It's like I had to learn how to cook all over again. And, I didn't enjoy, cooking or even going to the grocery store. I didn't realize going to Publix a month after she passed away that I would have a breakdown in the aisle just thinking about stuff. So, now I just do everything delivery. So in a way, I don't have to, I go to the grocery store only when I have to, but just, little things you start, it changes your habits.
Yeah, for sure. And Lynn says the end of life with Alzheimer's is very hard to watch.
It is, and it's very rapid. I never understood when people would tell me, because, like I said, I refused to Google. They said, the end stage goes very quickly. And I would refuse to Google. I was scared. I would Google and then I would not hit enter. And because I would be scared, and after witnessing it, I understand what people say. It just flashed before your eyes, and I think that's the reason why my grieving process is taking a lot longer, is because I can't. It's hard for me to fathom. Like, by the time my mom was in home hospice, I was taking care, and the nurses were here. My brother is a physician. He goes, "You can't handle this. She needs to go inpatient." So by the time we transferred her, I thought I would be able to talk to her, and she was just non-responsive, basically. So it's just, those types of things. You shouldn't take life for granted. You never know. If you want to say something, say it. I never said any. The last words to my mom is, "Mom, I'll see you at the hospital," and I was not able to have a conversation with her. So that's, also very difficult at the end stage.
Yeah, right. Because we don't know what's going to happen next. And this
Yes.
dude said that he knows you and he's had several sessions on the subject with you. And then Lynn said that her father passed only 10 months after her mother passed, and it took such a toll on the caregivers. And
It
then
does.
and Stephanie said, "Thank you so much for being with us today, Usha. You have a beautiful heart, and it was a pleasure hearing your inspiring story." Um, yeah, so Usha, let's switch gears for a moment. And can you tell us about your Alzheimer's Congressional Ambassador role?
Yes, I am a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association for the Central Florida chapter. I'm very active with the Orlando Walk, as well as a congressional ambassador for Congresswoman Val Demings. And I was basically relentless with Evan, who was the policy manager, and telling him, I want to get involved. I want to use my voice. This is what I do during the day. I sit and listen to constituents, and I know what I need to say to get things across. So that's how I became a congressional ambassador, went through the process. And you know what? The beauty of it is that we live in such a divided nation right now, Democrats and Republicans. Alzheimer's is purple. And when you think about it, it brings the Democrats and Republicans together, because this is an issue that affects everyone. When I first went to Washington, D.C., you would have to explain what Alzheimer's is and dementia. And now you don't have to explain what it is, because they're individuals like Congresswoman Demings or Senator Rubio who have been affected directly by this disease, or the staffers have been, and it becomes, a bit more emotional. They're able to relate. So basically, we talk about federal priorities, whether it relates to elder abuse in the nursing homes or legislation for caregivers. I think respite care is essential, as well as, resources. Also supporting different programs, whether it be for support groups or for the NIH, the National Institute of Health. Most importantly, money is needed to find a cure. For blood, for cardiac and for other issues, you take a medicine, and the doctors are fortunately able to make adjustments to medication. In the case of Alzheimer's dementia, cognitive health, that does not exist. Everything is trial and error. It's like, let's try this. And before you know it, you're increasing, one medicine, 10 milligrams, maybe every month. And then before you know it, there's no response. You have to switch it. So, most importantly, the fight is to encourage research to find a cure for this disease, because there isn't one.
Yeah, and how amazing would that be if there was progress, on that front, especially for like early diagnoses.
Exactly.
If there was more hope with early diagnosis. Um, and oh, can you tell us about your podcast, The Indian Caregiver?
Yes, that was another endeavor. I was a little hesitant to start, but after the Thought Leader Academy, I was motivated. A lot of individuals were starting a podcast, and I said, let me give it a try. So the goal of my podcast is just another extension of my voice, another outlet to inform individuals, to provide resources, to give a different perspective. Recently, I had one individual who had early onset, so I talked to him about what it was like when he was diagnosed, what changes he is going through, how it's affecting his family. Another one was I had a physician, Dr. Lamb, who is an emergency room physician and a dementia advocate, and she kind of talked about from a perspective how it's frustrating for a physician that they don't have enough time in the emergency room because everything's so quick to educate and to divulge more into the dementia aspect. So she shared what questions, patients should be asking, when their loved ones are in the emergency room. I've also had some topics about self-care for caregivers, as well as a multicultural approach, because caregiving, there's not a one size fits all. There are a lot of misconceptions, not only about Alzheimer's dementia disease, but also about caregiving. Earlier this year, I did a global forum, Let's Talk Dementia and Caregivers for the South Asian community, because to better educate them. So it's basically an education tool, highlighting different aspects, not only of the disease, but caregivers as well.
That's awesome. And what is the best way, Usha, for people if they want to connect with you?
LinkedIn is the best. Feel free to send me a message or connect with me. I'm also have my Instagram page, the Indian Caregiver. So feel free to, follow me there as well. So those are the two best platforms, to reach out to me. And I would love for people to reach out to me. As you see, I love, I've had actually a lot of people reach out to me and say, thank you for being vocal about it. I've been scared to talk about it, and ask me, advice or resources. So I do communicate with individuals to the best of my ability, providing resources. So I'm open to that.
Yeah, and you are a wealth of resources, Usha. So I highly recommend if anyone feels motivated to connect with Usha, please do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with me today, Usha, and for sharing your insights with our audience. I'm so grateful to have you with me.
Thank you, Mary Beth. It's really refreshing that you've got a segment on this. I've heard some of your other guest speakers, and they are very motivating. So it's an honor for me, for you to invite me up to be part of this. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Usha.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Take care.